Mike Evans and Davante Adams are primed to have another huge week, but we are a little worried about A.J. Brown and very worried about Devonta Smith in Week 16. We dig into our wide receiver and tight end rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. We're here for you every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. No, I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, let's get into our wide receiver and tight end rankings for Week 16. If you missed us yesterday, we did the running back and quarterback ranking, so you can go listen to that after you listen to this show. Right at the top for our wide receivers, no shocker, that is Ja'Marr Chase. He has been killing it and gets another great matchup against the Browns, so we love that for him. You know, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb, those are all no-brainers. And also the guys I'm mentioning here, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, and Davante Adams, like you're pretty confident about plugging them into your lineups, right? They're good players, but they can be up and down, and they all just had huge performances in Week 15. Who do you trust the most out of this group to have a second huge week? Brown gets the Commanders, Evans gets the Cowboys, and Adams gets the Rams.
Yeah, it's pretty close. I actually have them all three in a row here. Brown, Evans, Adams, 8, 9, 10. So it's pretty close. You have them at 6 and 7 here for Brown and Evans. You have Adams a little bit lower there, but not that far at number 10. So we both like all these guys in the top 10. And these matchups are great, right? There's no one really who can cover Davante Adams, especially if Aaron Rodgers is locked into him like 2019 or something like that, where it's like thrown back to some of their best season together. Davante Adams is scoring the touchdowns in bunches that he was known for at Green Bay. So they're throwing it back. You're having Mike Evans throw it back to the days of Jameis Winston and Tom Brady with him and Baker Mayfield. Again, the Cowboys are okay, but not great in covering things with their injuries. Deron Bland is not necessarily as shut down. He is this time he was last year, so you can beat him. You can throw downfield on them, and Adams is fine. But Brown is the one that we're not 100% sure, because now that he's been greased again, it seems like this happens like every few weeks. It's like, oh, A.J. Brown is complaining about the pass game. A.J. Brown needs the ball. Let's get him the ball. Then the next week, they might be like, you got your ball last week. So I don't know, but I think A.J. Brown really comes down to, do teams double team him and say Devonta Smith is going to beat us and we'll handle that? Or do the Commanders like just single cover him? So I'm thinking Brown could actually get going this week again. He's just too big and strong. And if that's the case, then we can't like Devonta Smith in relation.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly where I'm at here. With Mike Evans, I feel really good about him. He's going for that 1,000 yards, right?
Yeah.
He needs to get a lot more yards. He needs about 250 more yards over the next 3 games. So they're going to try to get him the ball. He's so good. And the Cowboys have been giving up a ton of yards to wide receivers. I mean, Ja'Marr Chase, Jalen Coker, and Terry McLaurin have all had over 100 yards and a touchdown against the Cowboys since Week 12. So I do feel good about Mike Evans. Adams is getting all the targets. You got to feel good about him in a nice matchup. The biggest worry about matchups is for A.J. Brown because of Marshawn Lattimore, right? Yeah. But you would expect Lattimore to not just be on A.J. Brown. They move him all over the place. Like Lattimore is going to be on Devonta Smith and Brown. But Lattimore was not targeted at all last week. He played 35 coverage snaps. And the Saints did not – was it the Saints that played him, right?
Yeah. The revenge game.
Yeah, revenge game. They did not target him one time in that game. Now, he was playing against bad quarterbacks, so we'll see if that changes. But that's your worry there. But I do trust A.J. Brown a lot more than Devonta Smith, who were both low on this week. Now, let's talk about Brian Thomas Jr. He's been great, right? Had a blow-up game last week as well. we both have him as a top 12 play again. I mean, he gets a nice matchup against the Raiders. It's hard to trust Mac Jones, but he's getting it done with him.
Yeah, and Mac Jones is just funneling the ball to him as much as possible. Why wouldn't you? I mean, this kid has proved everything as a complete receiver. He's kind of reminding me how Justin Jefferson slowly developed and splashed on the scene as a rookie, where you looked up and said, whoa, this kid is having a big year. Puka Nacua is kind of wire to wire. He had the big splash early where Brian Thomas has battled different quarterbacks starting. He's battled different roles, right? He was kind of the complimentary guy to Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis. Now he's become the alpha, clear number one as a pick here. So things kind of lined up really well for him. So Thomas and looks like Mac Jones and him have actually developed a very good chemistry. So I like it. The Raiders on paper don't give up a lot, but they struggled with the size of Drake London last week. It gave them up a touchdown, even with Kirk Cousins stinking. So I think Thomas scores. I'm not sure he's going to get for 10 for 102, but I could see him get 8 for 101, and you'd be very happy about that.
Yeah, I just he's a touchdown scorer, and as a rookie, that's impressive. So you got to have him in your lineup. We didn't mention Amon-Ra St. Brown. We talked about we're low on Jared Goff yesterday, but Amon-Ra can still have a good game, and he's just you can't. I mean, what are you going to do? Sit him? No. So we both still have him top 10. But another guy, I have T. Higgins at 9. You have him outside your top 12 at 14, but he's still a great play this week. Nico Collins is always a great play. Who's not often a great play is Tyreek Hill, who you're still keeping in your top 12. You have him at wide receiver 11. I have him at wide receiver 17. I personally think that's too high, but it's just so hard when you see the name Tyreek Hill to have him any lower than that. Finishes the wide receiver 61 last week after having 2 good weeks. I'll give him that. Like, he had 2 good weeks and then fell apart again last week. Gets the 49ers. That 49ers defense has really, the last few weeks, they've looked much better. I don't know. I don't know about Tyreek Hill this week.
Yeah, it was weird last week because in the weather in San Francisco, Cooper Kupp put up a 0 and Puka Nacua had a big game. So where does the Tyreek Hill fall in this wide range of outcomes, fantasy buzz phrase, in terms of putting the numbers up this week? And I mentioned on the quarterback show, how motivated are the Dolphins? And maybe Tua calling him out could say, I'm going to come out and play hard. It is in a kind of a prime window. It's not now a national game like it was before, but Tyreek Hill's playing the 49ers. Maybe something to prove out there with Debo. I don't know. There's something that he could be motivated or he could go in the tank. And Tua just need to stop throwing these balls up in the air downfield. Like, get Tyreek Hill on the shorter passes. You were short-arming balls last week and forcing things to coverage, or Derek Stingley Jr. was ready to jump on it. So Tua has to play better. Tua was awful last week. It was his worst game I've seen in quite a while from Tua, maybe ever. So when you look at that, it's like he should be decent. They're at home. So let's hope Tua plays a little bit better to also boost Tyreek Hill. It's also a tough matchup for Jonnu Smith. So that could also help Hill in this game as the guy that gets frequent volume and produces.
One guy I feel really good about this week, it's Malik Nabers, who I know it's always risky because it's quarterback play, but he gets a really nice matchup against the Falcons. He came through last week, 14 targets, so only turned into 82 yards, but at least he got the touchdown there to save his day at the end. But the Falcons can be beat deep, right? Like we saw last week. The Raiders they could have had huge plays, but Desmond Ridder was just so bad. Now, maybe that's what we get out of the Giants too, but I'm honestly hoping it's Tim Boyle at Giants quarterback and not Tommy DeVito. I thought Boyle just looked better overall. But I do think like Nabers is going to be able to beat the secondary deep. It just comes down to can the quarterback hit him or not. But like you can win against the secondary. So I really like Nabers this week. I have him as a top 15 option. He should have 100 yards in this game.
Yeah, and sometimes these lesser quarterbacks, and I'm not saying Tim Boyle's lesser than Tommy DeVito, either way, but I'm saying that sometimes they just don't think and just say pepper, the same guy. Like, I'm going to throw it no matter what. And some of these other quarterbacks that stink as backups, they come out there like, oh, I'm going to hesitate. I don't want to throw the ball to the go-to guy. You got to throw the ball to the go-to guy if you're out there and you're a backup quarterback or you have no shot. So I think Malik Nabers, we'll watch the Boyle, DeVito, stuff. I mean, I can't believe we're talking about that, but I think if Nabers it was so promising early with Nabers with Daniel Jones and what was going, and now he's like this. So please, Giants, go get this dude a quarterback next year. But I think he finishes strong here to maybe get closer to Thomas Jr., but I think Thomas Jr. has clearly established himself as the best rookie wide receiver this season.
Apparently, it's going to be Drew Lock who starts, not Tim
great.
Boyle or Tommy DeVito.
Okay. Do they have anybody else?
That just came out about an hour ago that we missed here. So, I guess that's the case.
He has an arm, so maybe that helps.
Well, he has a hurt elbow, so who knows? But still, good matchup. Drew Lock hopefully can beat this secondary. Poor Malik Nabers. I'm excited for him. I hope they get him a good quarterback for next year. That will be exciting. All right, we'll get into the rest of our wide receiver rankings. We have some tough decisions with wide receivers getting new quarterbacks this week, and Jerry Jeudy and Drake London. Can we trust them? Let's take a quick break and we'll dive into it. It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed the basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses. Some of those courses include the Constitution 101, the meaning and the history of the Constitution, the Great American Story, A Land of Hope, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic, and a brand new documentary-style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. So we have some quarterback changes. We have Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting for Jameis Winston in Cleveland. And now we have Michael Penix Jr. going to start for the Falcons with Kirk Cousins getting benched. That means, do we have to worry about Jerry Jeudy? I think Jerry Jeudy is probably the one to worry about more here than Drake London. I think Michael Penix Jr. could help Drake London. Maybe he can help Kyle Pitts, but probably not. And maybe help Darnell Mooney. But the one I feel best about is Drake London. On the other hand, with Jerry Jeudy, it's a great matchup against the Bengals, but we don't know how much DTR will actually throw the ball. We don't know if Jerry Jeudy will be his go-to guy. And Winston was just force-feeding him that ball over and over and over.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at this, and look, everyone knows I'm not the biggest Jerry Jeudy fan. Like, he just kind of needs a lot of volume to produce from the right quarterback, and now he doesn't have the right quarterback, and I'm just down on the Browns altogether. I mean, they're broken down. I mean, Nick Chubb wasn't great, but he was still kind of an emotional guy to have out there to lead the team. So I see a lot of Dorian Thompson taking off and running. I see a lot of whatever's happening at tight end between David Njoku and Jordan Akins. And I look at Jerome Ford, just getting a lot of the balls in here. But I don't see anything much that I want to go with the passing game. I mean, I've seen DTR. It's funny. The Browns wanted to look long at DTR. They've already seen it. He's not that good. So it's over. So no, but one thing about Penix, he has a big arm. Now, it's kind of weird because it's going to be left-handed, and it's a little bit different. And it's just the way the protection is going to change. But he's going to get the ball to Drake London and Darnell Mooney. He can chuck it. And this is a great matchup to start him in because, as you've documented a lot, the play action is going to be there. The Giants sink against play action. Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier should have a nice day on the ground. That should open things up downfield to make it very comfortable for him. I know the pass rush of the Giants is good, but otherwise, it's there. I'm not going to play Michael Penix, unless you're looking at deep DFS, because he's going to be dirt cheap this week. But when you look at this, I'm not too worried, actually. I mean, could you get any worse than Kirk Cousins the last few weeks? Absolutely not. So you might actually get an upgrade because you got a fresh arm and a guy that can actually move around a little bit to buy some time to throw downfield.
Yeah, we both have Drake London as top 13 options this week. Well, you're very low on Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver 38. I still have Jeudy at 20. He's going to end up being moved down, though, by the time we kick off, probably in the lower 20s for me, 27 range. Now, Juwan Jennings and Cooper Kupp, they both had miserable games last week. I mean, Cooper Kupp didn't even catch a pass, right? Juwan Jennings in that rain game did not come through, had a couple big drops there as well. Jennings gets a hard matchup against the Dolphins, but Cooper Kupp gets what used to be a hard matchup against the Jets, but now is apparently a great matchup. They should bounce. I think both will bounce back this week. I really do. I think both are good plays. They're wide receiver 2 range. It's not like huge. I mean, Cooper Kupp does have a huge ceiling, but we both have them lower end wide receiver 2s. I think they're solid plays.
Yeah, with the Dolphins, you're not sure, and I don't know if we even care at this point, where Jalen Ramsey is going to be. He's been pretty good. He's actually the one thing in the secondary that's actually worked. But does Jalen Ramsey try to get on George Kittle? I don't know. Does he still think that Deebo Samuel's a thing and tries to get on?
Please, because that would be such a waste.
I don't think so. But Jennings could see some of him, right? I mean, it's very feasible that he could see him. So if he can avoid that, they move in the slot where they don't necessarily want to put Ramsey. I think that's going to help Jennings. So I think he'll be fine. Cooper Kupp will be fine too. The Jets actually have been up and down. They're actually the best at number 2 corner with DJ Reed on the outside. They've not had the same season from Michael Carter and others on the inside. So I think Kupp's going to be fine. Jennings is going to be fine. I just wouldn't expect big games more than where they're ranked kind of as kind of middle to lower end wide receiver 2s.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Now, it looks like we're going to have Patrick Mahomes this week, right? He wants to play. It looks like he's going to play. So does that make you feel better about DeAndre Hopkins this week in a revenge game against the Texans? Like, I have a question for you. Let's say George Pickens plays. He gets the Ravens. In that same game, we have Zay Flowers against the Steelers, who have been very, very quiet lately. He has not scored more than 10 fantasy points since week 9. And he scored 8 or fewer points in 5 of the last 6 games, or 4 of the last 5 games. Would you rather go with George Pickens, Zay Flowers, or DeAndre Hopkins this week?
I think I would go. There's no way I can sit George Pickens in favor of either of those guys. Like, if he's good to go, the Ravens secondary kind of stinks. We know that. He could have had a big game in the first matchup. Look, he's volatile. He's all over the place, but who else are they thrown to? As we've seen, they go to Pat Frymuth and spread the ball to Calvin Austin, some other dudes, right, when he's not in there. When Russell Wilson has George Pickens, he's going to throw to him in high leverage downfield and scoring situation. Brandon Stevens is a terrible corner inside the red zone, so you think he could have a chance to score a touchdown. So there's no way I'm going there, but I do quite a bit like Hopkins playing the Texans. I mean, I think he's going to be a bit motivated. The Texans secondary is weak. I mean, we just had Tua throw some atrocious balls to them last week. We did like Tua going in. So I'm not saying we want to jump to play Mahomes, but I do like the chances of them using Hopkins and Xavier Worthy pretty well this week because speed can help. But yeah, I think that's where you go. And Zay Flowers, I don't know. There's something off about him I don't completely trust. I mean, Rashad Bateman had the big game last week. The tight ends are more involved. I don't know. It's just weird that he's not really produced. He's guy again. We haven't talked about much, probably because he hasn't done anything really that good or that bad to make us be excited either way.
It's going to be a hard decision there with these guys. I do think if George Pickens is out there, you got to just trust him. The only worry is that it is a hamstring and they'd be kind of rushing him back, and it could be like that one play and he's out. But yeah, he had a solid enough game against.
Just don't get in a fight with the Ravens and get thrown out, right? That's the other thing we have to worry about too.
That would be great. Now we are expected to see another new quarterback as well, and that would be Mason Rudolph with the Titans. They're expected to bench Will Levis for Mason Rudolph. So another ranking question: we got Calvin Ridley with Mason Rudolph against the Colts, a nice matchup. Jordan Addison against the Seahawks. Or DJ Moore or Keenan Allen against the Lions. How would you rank those guys? I actually have it weird. Like Jordan Addison would be my favorite out of this group, but only if Jonnu Smith starts on the other side, like for the Seahawks, meaning that the Seahawks can put up points to make the Vikings have to put up points, which would then in return make Jordan Addison a better play. If Jonnu Smith is out, then I think I lean Keenan Allen out of this bunch against the Lions.
Yeah, Keenan Allen has just been a rando scoring machine all of a sudden. Like, that's one thing he didn't really do a lot with the Chargers, and now he's doing that every week, it seems like, with the Bears when they're somewhat
13 targets last week.
Yeah, he got his matched his jersey number. So when you're looking at it, I mean, the Lions are pretty weak everywhere. I think they're actually a little bit weaker on the outside. So I really like DJ Moore this week. He had a big game in the first meeting as well. Don't forget about that. So I think this depleted defense says you want to get your Bears in, except for Romadinze and Cole Kmet don't extend there. But when you look at those weapons, I think they have a chance to do really well. I do agree with you. Like, if you don't have a shootout potential, it could be very limited here what they can do with Jordan Addison. Now, Calvin Ridley, again, it's pretty much a static move to Mason Rudolph. The only thing you get is maybe more possessions to do some things. Ridley's been decent. The Colts actually were pretty good on him in the first game, but it's Rudolph. It's Christmas. It's probably going to be a decent game for Ridley in Indianapolis this week.
Yeah, he would definitely be last out of this group for me.
Yeah, he's definitely.
I've gone with DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Jordan Addison, and then Calvin Ridley. Now, real quick, would you go Zay Flowers or Calvin Ridley?
Yeah, I'm not playing Zay Flowers. I'm just going to say that. Calvin Ridley is up there. Like, at least I know he's the number one, and he's got a situation where he has been productive in recent weeks. So I don't know. I just don't trust Zay Flowers. So straight up. I could be wrong, but he scored a touchdown last time, but only had 39 receiving yards. So if he doesn't get that touchdown, it's going to be a bad game.
Now we're going to transition over to our tight ends to finish up our rankings here. Our top three are the same, but we are very different on Jonnu Smith against the 49ers. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll debate when we get back.
All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Yeah, get in on the action here. It's the Chargers and Broncos. Yeah, it's not the most exciting. We don't expect a lot of fantasy explosion in this game with the defenses needing to rebound and all that, and the way the quarterbacks have played. So I do like the Chargers, however, rebound. They've lost 2 straight games. I don't know if they'll lose a third here with Jim Harbaugh. I think they'll adjust better on the short week at home. So I like them to cover that field goal-ish spread here on their side. So NFL action can only be tackled in the best way with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, whether it's Thursday night or Christmas or whatever, all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Michelle, we're getting into our tight end rankings, and we did not consult before, but look, most people would have had these guys as the top 3. Trey McBride, smash spot for the Cardinals against the Panthers. Brock Bowers, if he gets now a legitimate quarterback, looks like the case with AOC, gets Brock Bowers versus the Jaguars, so that's a really good matchup. George Kittle, decent against the Dolphins. Other than that, we defer. That's where we change here with Jonnu Smith. You have him up at number 4. I know he's been in an unbelievable stretch around the bye. He started before the bye, but he scored in every week since the bye. I have him down at 12, and I still have him startable, but why do you have him so high with your guy Fred Warner out in coverage?
I know Fred Warner is so good. I get that. But Jonnu Smith, he can be used more of like that wide receiver type player as well. And Tua is just hyper targeting Jonnu Smith. Even if it's not good for the offense. I mean, 11 targets turned into 48 yards. I definitely like Jonnu Smith better in PPR formats, right? Because even if he's not efficient with it. But the 49ers right now, their defense is playing better, but they're dejected, right? They really have no chance to make the playoffs. They're on the road on the East Coast. We'll see. I mean, Jonnu Smith is just scoring touchdowns. It's hard to say that you can't trust him. It is a really, really hard matchup, though. So maybe I'll move him down a couple spots. I do think 12, though, is a little a little far to have him down.
Yeah, just keep in mind, we were very close to a Jonnu Smith 0. There was an overtime in that one game. So he has to be careful. Look, he's been hot. I always get worried, right, when a guy keeps scoring, kind of like the Nick Westbrook-Akine. The moment he stops scoring, it's over for a while. Like, we don't, like, oh, it's so disappointing. He didn't score. I know he's done a lot more than score. He's had some big yardage and catch games, but.
And he's getting the targets.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is Tua.
He has 11 targets in 3 of the last 4 games.
And somebody was calling out Tua's completion percentage, right? Like, as soon as he throws downfield, anything up in the air, he gets intercepted. So he has to throw these shorter passes. That's why I've seen Devin Achane catch these checkdowns, right? Kind of, we've had Achane and Jonnu Smith replace the Jalen Waddle, like, extended handoffs in this offense. So, and I thought they would use Jonnu more as like a hybrid guy. You're right. They kind of use him as a wide receiver. They kind of use him as a quote flat running back, or so to speak. So that could help him out where he's not in the traditional tight end role. But again, I'm down on him just because there's some really good matchups this week, and he does not have, on paper, one of the better ones.
Yeah, it's definitely a harder one. And when you brought up Trey McBride and the guys above them, Brock Bowers and George Kittle, Kittle's just been killing it, but McBride and Bowers just had such good matchups. Yeah. And I'm calling it right now. McBride is going to score a touchdown for the first time this season. He has to finally score
it's ridiculous.
one.
He's had so many good games too in a row. So this has to happen for him. So
when I went to go look at like red zone targets, and let's talk about Travis Kelce here for a second, because he leads all tight ends in red zone targets this year, Travis Kelce. And then Noah Gray keeps stealing the touchdowns, though, right? Like, it's crazy that he has 20 targets in the red zone this year. The next closest guy, there's 2 tied at 16, George Kittle, who has 8 touchdowns in the red zone this year. And then Trey McBride is at 16 as well, with 0 touchdowns on the season. So, like, Trey McBride's going to score. And then what do we do with Travis Kelce? Because now Mahomes is playing. I have him ranked at 8. You also have him ranked at 8. Is when we finally give up on him in the playoffs, is this when he catches 2 touchdowns this week?
Yeah, I don't know if the holiday season will get him going, because he's got Saturday there. He plays on Wednesday against the Steelers. Maybe it's time to spend the holidays with Taylor Swift and all that. So maybe it could say, I need to put on a show for these folks here. These are 2 big games. I'm going to be on Netflix again, so I got to do some things here. So maybe he'll finish strong. We saw that, of course, last year. He saved his best for the playoffs, and he was fine. This is just crazy that 2 guys get targeted that much. It just doesn't happen very often where you get targeted that much in the red zone and don't score. So maybe there's a little bit something off between him and Patrick Mahomes, or they will run. But the one thing that their way of running in the end zone is Xavier Worthy of late. So they're not going to necessarily run. So you're going to get that touchdown. So it's really a matter of will they have enough touchdown opportunities really there with Travis Kelce. So again, 8 is a modest ranking, but I think that's fair based on the Texans actually pretty decent against the tight end and his recent production.
Now I want you to rank these 3 guys for me. We got Brenton Strange against the Raiders, who played on 82% of the snaps, saw 12 targets this last week with Evan Ingram on IR. Dalton Kincaid, who came back from injury, in the second week, he looked solid, right? Or his first game back from injury, he played 48 snaps, 7 targets, 53 yards. 48% of the snaps, I should say, he played. He's normally upwards towards 70, 80% before the injury. So that should increase. He gets the Patriots this week. And then Pat Freiermuth against the Ravens. How would you rank those 3 guys?
Yeah, this is very interesting because I am making this decision. Okay, I'll say one decision's already made. I'm starting Brenton Strange easily over Kyle Pitts. I actually picked him up in the playoff. Don't tell me how I'm on the semifinal with Kyle Pitts as my starting tight end, but it was true. And I'm in the semifinal with Dalton Kincaid as my starting tight end. So don't tell me how I did that. But when you look at those matchups, look, Kincaid, I feel like 7 for 53 is like a Dalton Kincaid game at this point. Like, he very rarely scores. He doesn't necessarily make those big 30-yard plays that I'm looking for, even though he can stretch the field. So I think he's a decent floor tight end to play. I think Brenton Strange, however, is a very good floor tight end to play based on Mac Jones, where his targets are going. Brian Thomas Jr., the tight end, it just changed the name from Evan Ingram to Brenton Strange. And Strange actually looks pretty good. He's a 2nd-round pick. So I think this kid could actually be really good going forward. So I like Brenton Strange here, strangely, at number 11 I actually like him ahead of Jonnu Smith this week. I could be crazy, but the Raiders matchup just looks that good. I know Kyle Pitts did nothing, but Kyle Pitts is Kyle Pitts. That's why I'm playing Strange over him. And then you look at Kincaid. I think I still like him. I have a 13. But looking at Pat Freiermuth, he's a guy that I look at. I'm going to feel good about him at 9. So, yeah, if you have all these three guys, Freiermuth is the most trustworthy. But Strange over Kincaid, Pitts, some of these other struggling tight ends, a no-brainer this week.
Yeah, I'd rather go Strange than Kincaid, and the Freiermuth would be last for me.
Wow.
I actually have Freiermuth ranked pretty low this week at 14.
Tough matchup, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup, and he's been coming. Like, talk about touchdowns. That's the only thing saving Pat Freiermuth. It's not. He's not getting, even without George Pickens there. The targets. He had 6 targets, but the receptions aren't there. 3 and 3 the last 2 weeks. He had 22 receiving yards last week. In that Ravens game earlier, he had 2 receptions for 14 yards. Like, I'm pretty low on Pat Freiermuth. Of course, if he comes through with a touchdown, he'll be okay. But I still don't even think his ceiling's very high, even if he gets a touchdown. So who really cares? And then there's 2 guys that are possibilities that you can go with that have nice matchups. You got Dalton Schultz against the Chiefs, or Chigakonkwo against the Colts. If I'm going with one, it's going to be Chigakonkwo, just because of the targets he got last week, especially when Mason Rudolph came in, and because of, they both have good matchups, but Schultz just is never used.
Yeah, Schultz did have a pretty good game a couple games ago where he caught a touchdown. He had 6 catches for 51 yards, I believe, also in that game. So I thought he was going to do more last week against the Dolphins, but I think this week you just look at the Chiefs matchup. They've been bad against a tight end all season long. Now, I'm not going to pound the table for Dalton Schultz, but I think he's a little bit more playable here because of the matchup at 14. I'm 14. I don't really have, I'd say he's probably in the 20s for me with Chigakonkwo. So I don't want to go down in flames with either of these guys. I'll just say that. But if I had to go with one based on the matchup that I trust maybe getting the ball a little bit more, it's Dalton Schultz, but not by much.
Yeah, and I would lean the Conco way. But hopefully, like, if you're desperate for a tight end, hopefully you're able to pick up Brenton Strange. Like, there's not many people competing on waivers right now.
Right.
Hopefully you're able to pick him up and off waivers this week. And that's the guy you're playing, or Dalton Kincaid if you're able to pick him up. Those 2 would definitely be my go-tos there. That is it for our wide receiver and tight end rankings. We will be with you again tomorrow to dig into our favorite sleeper of the week at each position, and then get into some daily fantasy talk, because that's always a fun time as well. Hit that subscribe button if you're listening on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast app, give us a like, subscribe, leave us a review, all the good stuff. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.